from now until we get into heaven, we're going to fall short on a day in and out basis. We're going to need the blood of Jesus to cover us and the grace of Jesus to reconcile us back to him.
This is The Uncomfortable Truth. Hello and welcome back to The Uncomfortable Truth. I'm Shane, this is Obi, and our two guests are Joe Lane and Eddie Maldonado with Young Life. We've been talking about Young Life, what Young Life is. Now we're going to talk about the impact of Young Life. Joe, I'm sure you've seen a few transformations in your time.
Yeah.
With kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you talk about one that stands out to you?
Sure. Yeah. So we had this sixth grader this year who I think he was at Pine Tree for a little bit and then was homeschooled, but not really being homeschooled. Like just kind of was falling through the cracks. And he got to sign up for camp. And we were kind of before camp. I heard more of his story that his dad's in prison for trying to put his hands on his mom, and so this boy has this ton of anger towards his dad, like wanted to kill his dad in that moment, and comes to camp with us, and you could just tell first of all we had 18 middle school boys from Longview in one cabin.
Wow.
Which was just like the 3 leaders. We were outmatched, and breaking up a potential fight every couple hours, and so this kid goes through the week, and
That's awesome, but that's not awesome. It's just like
it was chaos. And it was we learned a lot this summer.
What not to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
It was the kids that needed to be at camp, which was awesome. But we needed some, maybe another leader and some other training of kids are
Defense training?
yeah. So, I mean, or like figuring out who's lying type of thing. Like no, you both are. One of you is lying, and I have to figure this out.
As a parent, it's just like, I'm just going to quit trying to figure it out. You're both guilty.
Yeah, we needed special forces, like interrogation training, and just like combat stuff. But so this kid going through the week, you could just see the anger just popping out in different ways. Almost getting into it with some guys, and one kid we had to actually send home because he said a racial slur to this boy, and I'm like, in the middle of the week, I'm just like, God, what the heck are you doing? Like, what is going on here? We're here so that kids can know Christ, and it feels like the enemy's just
Right.
down our throats. And at Young Life Camp, there's a talk progression. So each night, the first night, it's kind of more about creation, who you're designed to be, who's Jesus. And then there's the sin talk, which is like, hey, why is this world broken? Why are we messed up? And then the fourth day, we get to the cross talk. And after the cross, we try to have a one-on-one conversation with every kid at camp, or just the kids that we brought at least. So on that day, this boy pulls one of our leaders aside and says, hey, can we do our one-on-one time? And that doesn't happen. Normally, it's like we have to like drag them to the, like, hey, it's time. They're like, no, I don't want to do it. Come on.
Come here.
And
I got some snacks, man.
yeah, come on, let's go to the snack bar. That's how we have to entice them. But he reached out to one of our leaders and said, hey, I want to talk about stuff. And man, just opened up, walls came down, accepted Christ, which was just like, we were just blown away. Wow. And then the cool thing is when we got home, well, he got to tell like other leaders like what he had done, and we were just so like pumped for him. And he got home and then went to church with another one of our leaders who he lives next door to. Is I don't know how consistent he's been, but he's at least been taking steps. So it's just cool to see like somebody that was ready to like, I want to kill my dad.
Yeah.
To like, I know Jesus now.
Yeah.
Which is just wild. So
Man, and affirms the process.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
We think about, like you said, Shane, we think about Bible Belt, East Texas. You'd mentioned there's over 500 churches. I'd be curious what that.
Somebody put it on Facebook the other day. I
wonder what the
can't
radius is. 50 miles maybe.
It's probably less than that, dude.
It might be.
I don't remember. It was staggering. It may have been 700, but I don't remember what the radius was.
Well, Mobberly, the church that we attend, they partner with a lot of the Longview ISD schools. They'll usually pick a school. For the last couple of years, it's been Ware Elementary.
Yep.
We always do this event every year before school starts called Hamburgers and Haircuts, and I cook about 600 hamburgers, and we give away backpacks and we give away haircuts for all the kids before they get to their first day of school, and it's staggering. 70% of the kids at this elementary school did not have dads in their homes.
Yeah.
70% in Longview, Texas, in the middle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
And we think that we've got to go to Africa to lead people to Jesus. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people in Africa. I'm not saying we don't need to go on missions. I'm saying that we are missing the boat if we think that there aren't people right here in our community. And talking about fatherless homes, I mean, we talk about what that does to a home, and we talk about the kids that were raised in fatherless homes. 70% of the men, the young men in prison, are from fatherless homes. I want to say like 63% of rapists are from fatherless homes. It's staggering, the statistics, whenever dads aren't being dads and we aren't doing what we need to be from Kingdom Men's standpoint. And so cool to me. Again, you guys, that's I talked to you a little bit about, that's where kind of our foundation is. And I know Shane really wanted to get into, what you're seeing in today's teens. Can you kind of shine some light on that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Gen Z is probably the most misunderstood generation that's come through. And I'm a millennial, but it's still like the gap you can feel.
It's millennial and then Gen Z, right? So it'd be like kids. I say kids.
Gen Z's like college kids, like maybe 24, 25 and down right now.
Okay.
But then Gen Alpha's on the way up. So I'm like, I don't even figured out Gen Z yet, but Gen Alpha's coming up, and here we go. But so Gen Z is probably it's the most anxious generation, most dealing with a lot of hopelessness because they have so many. Gen Z's never known life without a smartphone. You know? They've grown with a smartphone in their hand since they've been alive, and trying to think of like, how high school and middle school was tough for all of us, but imagine adding like access to the world, and now you have to compare yourself to everybody and not just like Jimmy at the locker next to you and like people on your football team, like
and everything is documented.
Yeah, it's all recorded
from multiple angles. It's available on the internet.
So there's, you got cancel culture. So kids are really like, okay, I have to be very careful about what I do. It feels like they're always walking on eggshells, anxiousness, suicidal thoughts is at an all-time high. So you look at this and you're like, okay, what do we do? This is a lot. This is, but we've seen statistics that say, man, if they just have one caring adult who's not their parent that's in their life, like just the statistics are off the charts of like, they're more likely to graduate high school. They're more likely to not engage in risky behavior. Like, just because of the face-to-face relationships is always going to be the solution, obviously Jesus and a life of a purpose bigger than themselves, but
the horizontal relationships. Yeah. I mean, that's what he said. I mean, it's what the greatest commandment, is, that's where it's at. It's I'm the only God, and love your neighbor as yourself. It's the relationships that we have horizontally and the servants that he calls us to be in those relationships. It makes the difference in everyone's life.
Joe had a stat for the number of kids that if you were to survey kids and ask them would you like somebody to help mentor you? What was the number, Joe?
Yeah, so like Gen Z said, like 70% of Gen Z said they would like guidance and mentorship from older generations. But then I think 70% of those kids said that they feel misunderstood by that generation, like the older generation. So it's like there's this gap between like we have to be a little more empathetic and understanding and patient with the younger generation, because we can quickly become like, well,
throw some dirt on it.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to a guy the other day.
Yeah.
I was talking to a guy the other day at Upwards football game, and his son came over and sat by us, and he was talking to us during the game before he had to go back in. And then my son came over, and then they went back in, and we're just talking about our youngest kids. They like the affirmation. And he said, yeah, I tell my kid often, you're doing a good job. And he said, when I was in school, he said, my dad, he waited until, he said, I was a pretty good athlete, pretty successful in high school. And my dad patted me on the back after I graduated and said, hey, man, you did a good job.
One time.
Yeah, he's like, that's all I got.
Yeah.
And now that's not necessarily how I was raised. I was affirmed, but not to the level that I affirm my kid. It's like, we want to go back and we want to say, well, when I grew up, it was, rub some dirt on it, go out there and do what you got to do.
I don't think we can do that anymore.
It's different.
Yeah. I would say what you're seeing in Gen Z is the lack of grit and endurance,
No question. Yeah, you're right.
But, we can quickly point fingers, but we've, as older generations, have been a part of how we've set them up.
Right.
Yeah. I read this book one time, and it was kind of just talking more about, hey, as parents, how have we done a disservice to Gen Z? Like, we think about it. We live in a much different, when we were growing up, we could ride our bikes anywhere, and there was a lot of freedom and autonomy that our parents gave us. And I think nowadays we've kind of swung to the other end of the pendulum, right? Where almost every part of their life is prescribed for them. Okay, you got to go to school, then we have this practice afterwards, then you got to go to tutoring. And then, so they've had they've been handed what they're supposed to do, but we haven't created space for them to have, make decisions and a little bit of freedom. And because that's where you grow, right? Is when you're able to make mistakes, is when you're able to critical thinking, problem solving. But if we prescribe their whole lives, it actually leads to more anxiety because they don't feel like they have any control.
Which everything you're saying is against the societal grain,
right?
Like our mindset, and when we're looking at or thinking about parenting and thinking about giving our kids freedom and not hovering over them and allowing them to go ride their bikes, and like all of that stuff is just ludicrous. Like, what are you talking about? What if they get kidnapped? What if they get, and it's like, they're gonna be fine. Just let them do it. And it's you've got this culture, this society that's saying, don't do that. When in reality, you're so right. It's what's missing.
It's structure, it's surveillance, it's like a continual presence that like we didn't have when I'm a little bit older than you guys, but like my parents were like, "Yep, be home when it's dark."
Same exact way.
Like
all of us.
Like go play in the woods.
Right.
Again, I was at Upwards practice the other day, and I just overheard a dad saying, "Hey, where's my kid?" Or no, it was a mom. "Where's my kid?" He went to the bathroom. He had been gone for like 3 minutes, and she was freaking out.
Yeah.
And then dad chimed in and said, "Yeah, I know, I'm a helicopter parent too." Like, let your kid go to the bathroom. Like, you're at a church football league. Like, relax. But it's because, and they referenced right there, did you hear about that girl in California that got kidnapped?
The fear-based. It's all,
It's all
we're living our
available.
life in fear.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time, like I'm still navigating it. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and we're like thinking through, okay, how do we raise a kid in this new, world that we live in, but also create space for them. And I'm not saying give a 6-year-old like the most autonomy.
Yeah.
Like
His 6-year-old
you
has
give
an
more
iPhone.
over time. No, he probably wants one. Yeah, he loves Minecraft.
That's how you
already.
start a fight with the cousins in my family. It's like, I heard so and so got an
Who got an
iPhone.
iPhone, yeah.
And the kid's like, what?
You think about, I compare iPhones or smartphones to driver's license.
Yeah.
A kid can't get a driver's license until they're 16 because they're not responsible enough to have one. I believe that we should enact some type of rules.
Sure.
Because we're handing kids literally loaded guns.
Yeah,
And saying, and most parents don't have any restrictions
No.
on those. Here you go.
yep.
And when a gun goes off, you don't know when that phone.
No.
I mean, like that's the hard part, right? It's like if you hit a kid a gun, you'd hear it go off at least.
Yeah.
You would have some indication there's something's
Right.
gone wrong. It's just terrifying. The whole
It's
thing
a,
is just
it's a slow death.
Yeah.
If we're correlating it to a gun, it's like every single time that they load it and that they get on it, it's rotting their minds because their minds aren't ready for it.
Yeah.
They're still developing.
Yeah.
Well, and like when the kids are in school, the parents are like, "Well, my kid's got to have their phone so I can get a hold of them." It's
Right.
like they're at school.
That's another fear-based thing.
Yeah.
Like, what if an active shooter comes in? I need my kid to be able to call me. Like a lot of parents will say that.
That's wild.
We at Young Life Camp we take up the phones when we get
Amen.
there, and because we wouldn't get anything accomplished with, and there's no service out there anyways, but kids are just like devastated, like like you're ripping a drug away from them.
Well, you are.
Yeah,
That's exactly what
And
you're doing.
it's kind of cool to see them like be kids when you just take away that for a week, and like some of the parents are like, oh well, how do I get a hold of you? It's like, well, I'll have my phone and
Yeah,
you
you
call the
call me.
camp.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay.
And they revert back to like the natural behavior so much
being a
faster
kid.
than you think it would.
Yeah.
Like it's
Faster than we do.
Yeah. If I had my phone taken away from me for half a day, I would probably still be like, I
Anxious.
got stuff to do. I don't know what's going
Yes.
on.
So I'm gonna look at the camera here. A lot of the reason that our kids are the way that they are with these devices and all is right here. I'm pointing at myself. The parents. We're raising Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We have to consider all of the consequences of the actions that we take in the parenting that we offer to our kids.
There was kind of an event in our lives that started to reshape like how do we think about raising our kids and wanting them to follow Jesus. And we were at a wedding this summer and got to see some of my old roommates, and I didn't know where they were at in their faith or anything like that, but we kind of got talking. Me and my wife got talking with them, and kind of found out that they have walked away from Christianity and their faith. And this was kind of the first people we've heard, a lot of other people doing that, but
Became
this was it became
real.
real. And we're just like, how did they get there, and how did we not get there? And what we kind of boiled it down to is like we've tasted enough of Jesus to know that hey, we could see a lot of crap around us, but like we still know like, hey, we still believe that Jesus is real and that he loves us and that we have a relationship with him. But we've just seen so many well-intended parents that are almost just like, just shoving the Bible down kids' throats almost, where it's like, hey, you got to get this verse, like, and we've prescribed this whole thing, but we haven't given them space to wrestle and to like, is this going to be your own? And that takes a lot of trust, because you're like, all right, God, like, I can't save my kid.
I'm giving him or her to you.
Like, so we're just trying to think through how do we create space for our kids to, how would we wrestle and have these conversations? And I think it showed us that like the most important thing as parents we can do as Christian parents is we want them to see us living out an authentic faith,
Yes.
not just a plain church, not just going through the motions, and then we're different at home than we are when we're doing ministry. And that's been just humbling for me, and like letting my kids hear like, hey, I blew it, and like, will you forgive me? I didn't hear that much growing up.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, like what you're doing with Young Life, first of all, is going to have such an amazing impact on your children. You know, it's been neat. It's really been neat for me to see my kids ask about why we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Why, and then watching some of the podcasts. So I've got actually. Happy birthday, Andrew. Today's Andrew's
Happy birthday, dude.
Let's go.
Andrew,
It's going to be like 2 months behind, but happy
right.
birthday, dude.
That's
we love you.
Andrew is my son. I inherited him when he was 7 years old, and he's 23 today.
Wow.
And anyway, he is graduating from Navy Nuclear Engineering School.
Heck yeah, dude. Way to go, man.
On the 9th of November. So
Sounds like a freakishly smart.
He's
He's sharp,
crazy smart. The Naval Nuclear Engineering program is a 4-year MIT engineering degree bottled down into a year and a half.
Golly.
It's literally the hardest intellectually challenging school in the armed forces.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's super cool, and he's a month away from. It's the third school. He's finishing his final school, but he asked me weekly when the next live podcast is coming on. You know, he's like, what he asked questions, and it's opened a whole new relationship with he and I that I prayed for years. You know, him asking questions and just digging into Jesus in a way that I was a little concerned he might not ever do. And he has, and it's so awesome. Gosh, it's awesome.
It's cool.
And so I feel like that
You're correlating that to what he's doing and his kids being around
Absolutely.
Young Life and seeing mom and dad interact.
Not going to church, not just reading your Bible, not maybe practicing the spiritual disciplines that we know are vital to our spiritual growth, but loving people, like truly serving and loving people. And our kids seeing that is, I believe, is going to make all the difference.
My kids still ask me about, worked at Heartlight. My wife and I worked at Heartlight for a while. Y'all know what Heartlight is? It's a residential facility for struggling teens. And like, if you're classifying kids as like bad kids, I mean, some people, the owner of that or the founder of that would say there's no bad kids. It's just kids that make bad decisions. Yeah. So these are kids that have made some pretty bad decisions that are there. But my kids, we used to go to events there all the time. We used to basically live there. And my kids were small, like little. I think when I quit working there, my oldest is 15 now. She was probably 7.
Yeah.
Still ask me about that place because they remember the memories of probably mostly the fun activities, but there was just this presence of something different that was going on that they really, something just locked in their memory that they wanted to hold on to.
Yeah. So I would just encourage parents to allow their kids to see you loving other people.
Yeah.
Allow your kids to see you serving other people. I just feel like that. It was a big difference maker in my life. My mom and dad are both just servants. Yeah. My dad changes the light bulbs in the church. He mows the church every week. He sent me a picture yesterday.
He's not on staff. He doesn't get paid.
No, not at all. He built the church swing set last year, and this is like a rock star swing set. Apparently, there's some new game called Gaga
Ball.
Yeah. So it's like a little octagon thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So dad sends me a picture yesterday of
he built the Gaga.
He built a Gaga pit.
Oh, that's heavy duty
serious.
one too.
For the
That's
kids
serious.
at church. He just finished it yesterday.
That's awesome.
I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah,
He's
pretty
like,
fun.
He said, just finished the Gaga pit at the church, and those are all the kids.
It's
at the
hard
church
for old people
right
though because you gotta bend down a lot.
If you want to feel old and just like your athletic ability is gone, get in there in that Gaga pit.
Really?
Yeah,
and
dude.
you get out pretty quick.
See, I don't even know what it is.
Yeah,
You have to hit a kickball and you have to hit somebody on the knee or below. So all you can do is just hit it
with your hand. So
With
you're
your hand,
bending
yeah.
over.
Okay.
So you're just trying to dodge it, jump. Like
That's cool.
It's pretty
it's
intense.
intense.
Well, Dad made that for the church this past week. That's what he spent his last week doing, just up at the church making a gaga pit.
So,
Pretty cool.
so you're saying consistency creates impact, like true impact. And that seems
Yeah.
like what you guys are going for with Young Life. You're not trying to just start a bunch of ministries in 18 schools right now. You're trying to have a deep impact over whatever kids that you can have a deep and with whatever ability and the staff and the volunteers and leaders that you have. With something to end the show, how can the people listening to this podcast help Young Life, specifically Longview?
Yeah. I think there's a few ways. One is like, hey, if you're like, man, I would love to see Young Life at the school my kid's at, or wherever you're at, like reach out. Let's have conversations. Let's start dreaming and praying and thinking through that. Two, you could always help financially. We got to raise our own budget every year. And if you go to greaterlongview.younglife.org, you can do that.
You can donate directly on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then
you can volunteer as a volunteer leader if you're interested in getting into the schools and you want to address that fear. I'll never forget driving to the high school the first time. I'm talking to the security guard and I'm so nervous. I'm like, so how's your day?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm here to talk to kids. Okay. You want to go do that? Like, I was terrified. So get involved, man. Get plugged in. Volunteer leader's great. There's a committee. There's a whole group of adults that we get together and we pray. We set like 2-year plan, 5-year plan. What are we doing this week? We have every year we have a committee that we put on an event, like a banquet.
Fundraising
We just
banquet,
had a fundraising banquet.
Awesome.
And we try to pull in people who don't have exposure to it. Had a really good club talk, or a good talk at this last banquet where I learned about somebody who I've known for like 10 or 15 years, and he told his story, and I was blown away.
Yeah.
Like first generation Christian, and you never would have known it. And so it was really cool. So committee, if you're an adult and you want to get involved, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. If you can just support financially or just like come up to Joe and say, hey, I'm praying for you.
Sure.
Just, Joe's really active in the community. He knows
I love
people.
gifts and gift cards.
Yeah. Cups of coffee and meals.
That's good. Go to the website if you can, however you can help. But the easiest way to help is financially. That's the, like, if you don't feel like you have the time, which we can go down that rabbit hole of whether we actually have the time or not. But give $30, like that. In our inflation-filled environment right now, $30 is nothing. Like that's, giving up a coffee for a few days.
Yeah.
Like 2 days now.
Yeah.
So
You can impact like hundreds of kids with that $30 though, because he does a breakfast with ninth graders that are at the high school now, and I would say that's $30 worth of donuts.
Oh yeah. Easy. I mean,
what is that? What do those donuts cost?
I mean, Friday mornings we do ninth grade donuts before school. I mean, you're walking out $40-50 a week sometimes.
Okay, so let's make it $50 and pay for a Friday morning
Yeah.
donut.
If you want to sponsor some donuts,
Yeah,
But those kids literally will go all week on that one thing.
they're pumped about it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
awesome. Guys, we really appreciate you being here today. I feel like that was super productive in learning more about Young Life, what you're doing, and what you guys are doing, and how you're impacting the community. Go out and kick the day in the face, and we'll catch you on the next one.